Guys, so a bit of a different video than what I normally do here, but we did just get an update from Rabbit in the form of a blog, and I thought it would be cool just to check out the blog together. I haven't really read through the whole thing yet, and I thought if we just see what's in there, react a little together. I hear there's some good news in there, maybe some disappointing news. We'll find out. Let's get into it. So this is it. Your questions about R1 and LAM answered. And now I should say, I don't know if they'd ever admit this, because I see the sort of the temperature on the Discord sometimes, but it feels like a lot of this stuff is happening in reaction. But at the same time, I don't actually blame them for that, because I think that they've been so busy sort of getting the Rabbit ready for launch and release and everything that they haven't really had a chance to spend a lot of time on feedback to the community about certain things. So I think that the bigger updates like this is sort of the best that they can do at the moment. It's such a busy time for them. So let's take a look. Your questions about R1 and LAM answered. We're getting very close to shipping the first batch of R1 devices from the factory. A ton of work has gone into the product since we first introduced it R1. Introduced the R1 at CES, sorry. Engineering design teams will be working around the clock. Makes sense. R1 is your ticket to experience the next gen of AI, which I think that's what most of us are hoping for. Where you can have a personal assistant. We'll keep working consistently to improve the experience over time, blah, blah, blah. Okay, when will the R1 start to ship, and when will I receive mine? I know the answer to mine is a long time, but that's okay. So we're proud to say that we're on track for the first batch to start leaving the factory on March 31st. So that I have seen on the Discord. They've said it many times. It would be very strange for them to back out from that now. So it'll take a few weeks for the first batch of orders to be delivered because of logistics. There are a few steps to process the orders, which most of this is to do with the US, but I'll recap for you. So the first batch leaves the factory and goes through customs. You get an email, right? The devices get shipped to the US, where they'll go through another round of customs, which is pretty standard. After clearing customs, they arrive at our warehouse where your order is processed. And when it's sent out to your delivery address, you'll get an email with a tracking number. So really, you get a notification when it's getting prepped. You get a notification when you got a tracking number, and then when it reaches you. That's it. So they anticipate the first R1 orders to reach customers in the US, and that's probably a very important part, to start arriving by April 24th. So it's just a little under a month from now. Please note that these are for US orders only. And the process may vary for future batches sent to other countries, So keep an eye on your order status, which you can do on their website once you've pre-ordered. Okay, this is the big part, because I think that a lot of people are still very confused about the LAM. And like I should say, I'm in a lot of different groups on Facebook and on the Reddit and in Discord, and I see a lot of really, a lot of the same questions over and over again, and I think it's probably because they haven't been able to answer them directly without getting in the way of the actual work. So, what can I expect on day one after receiving my R1? And so this is probably the most important thing for a lot of people. The following features will match what was demonstrated in the keynote. Basic features are conversation with LLM, right? Up-to-date search with Perplexity, the AI vision, bi-directional translation, and note-taking with an AI summary. The LAM-powered features, they've got specifically here music, generative AI, rideshare, and food services. And I'd love to understand a bit more about the generative AI. The keynote shows a bit about Midjourney. Hopefully we can figure out some more about that. But it says, regarding the travel feature, it's capable of demonstrating, it's capable of operating the same way they demonstrated in the keynote, but they're working out final regulatory details and aim to release it in a future over-the-air update. So basically, from the keynote, the thing that they've pulled, and something from one of my previous videos, is that planning the trip feature, which, to be honest, I'm okay myself. I don't travel that much, so I'm okay with that. But it looks like it's probably going to be just a little bit behind. And I imagine there's going to be a lot of over-the-air updates. Okay, so LAM, something that people get very confused about all the time. LAM, again, stands for Large Action Model. Simply put, it's a model that learns how to use software it runs into, takes actions, and gets better over time, which we already knew. Let's see, you can ask it to do something, it takes care of it for you, right? Bring a real-time agent, or the rabbit, to a kind of AI hardware is no simple task, which I get. It seems like it's a new thing, which is the point. While we've already begun training LAM for a few years, we're taking a very careful approach in how we introduce it to the general public. For the R1, we're focusing on the most commonly used apps, building a custom UI for each category of service, and conducting thorough quality testing to make sure they all function well. Our aim is to create a delightful, efficient, and intuitive user experience with privacy and data security at the core of everything we do. So that's interesting to know that, at least for those things, so music, generative AI, rideshare, and food, they're sort of working on a user interface that changes for those specific tasks, and probably some more in the future. Other LAM functionalities listed above are just the first step in what will be a constantly evolving and quickly improving experience. As the saying goes, this is the worst technology will ever be. Yep. Over time, LAM will offer many new features and greatly improve latency, meaning you'll be able to accomplish more in less time. So, I mean, all of that seems the same to me. I don't really see anything different there than what was expected. So far, the only thing I've seen is the travel is not going to be there. What is Teach Mode and when will we see that? So Teach Mode is an experimental capability that lets you train your own rabbits to perform specific tasks on niche apps and workflows, which I showed in a previous video of mine. This will be giving you the power to create your own personalized agents to handle tasks specific to your needs, and it will be simple to use even though you don't have any experience with coding or programming, which makes sense. We're taking our time to make sure the platform is ready and mature before we release publicly later this year. We may invite insiders to try preliminary versions of Teach Mode, so if that interests you, just stay tuned to the official channels for more information. So, and they did say that it was experimental. They never said that it was coming out with the rabbit straight away. So, but it's good to know that if you're in the know and in the channels and in the Discord, I assume, you can sort of keep up with what's happening. Okay, how will updates work? Will I have to download OTAs? R1 runs headless in the cloud, which means that most of the computing is offloaded to data centers. We intentionally designed it this way to move as fast as possible and bring updates and improvements to R1 as they happen. So the point, just to clarify what that means in case somebody isn't sure or is trying to figure out what it means. Basically, a lot of the computing is happening elsewhere, which means when they do the updates, they're actually only updating there most of the time, as opposed to too many software updates on the phone itself. And I just glanced ahead and it seems like it's explaining it, so I'll just let them do it. So what does that mean for OTAs? Unlike software updates on your smartphone, our version of OTAs will be more effortless. Many updates will happen in the cloud and you won't see them happening, and in essence that means you'll just wake up one morning and discover that R1 is more capable than it was when you went to sleep the night before. Updates that require you to accept them will be much lighter than a typical smartphone OTA, and will give you a clear prompt. The product team will be testing a lot of features and trying a lot of new things to make R1 a useful, reliable, exciting companion for long term. They'll be improving things consistently and quickly, so yeah, that's exactly right. So the point is here, they're not doing a massive number of updates on the hardware itself, which is great. It means that you're likely not going to be constantly downloading updates, particularly in this early stage, which I think, I try to have these conversations with people about this kind of technology, and you realize that not a lot of us were using smartphones when the first iPhone came out, but when it did, there was a lot of updates that happened. It was pretty much weekly, and it can be a little bit cumbersome. And even the Samsung phones in the first iterations of the Galaxy and stuff like that, some of the updates would take so long. They would wipe the phone. They would do so many things. It's really tricky time when you're starting something fresh and different, and in hardware. So this gives me a lot of confidence to think that they're mainly focusing on where the computing is happening rather than on the device, and even then smaller than normal. So okay, so how does Rabbit Hole work? Which is still my favorite name. So Rabbit Hole is the portal to help you manage all of your connected services for the Rabbit OS, and will be available from day one, which makes sense because most of these things would not function without it. So to connect services that are supported, all you need to do is sign in on your account on the Rabbit Hole, click the service you want to connect to, and sign in with the credentials. And so I assume these services are some of the stuff that's probably going to be more integrated with the LAM itself. Stuff that they have done a lot of pre-training on, like music apps and the food apps and etc. etc. And I'm assuming as well things like your Google account or something of the like, that maybe your Google Docs and your Google Drive and that kind of thing. So agents on our platform, which we call Rabbits, can see the process of you logging into vendors' apps. The act of entering your username and password is encrypted and protected, and we do not store the information in our database. However, we do retain an authenticated state of your app on our cloud, securely stored so that our agents can act on your behalf. So what that means, maybe I'll let them finish first. You can remove this information whenever you'd like. We're also actively working with industry partners, including security auditors, to better secure your data. So there's probably a little bit to dissect there, but in a nutshell, what they're trying to say is when you log in to a service at the Rabbit Hole, what they're not doing is storing the actual password. They're using, let's say it's my Google account. If I sign into my Google account, it's authenticating on the Google site, and the Rabbit service is storing a secured and logged in version of that on their servers, and that's what you're sort of maintaining through the Rabbit Hole. And so if you want to remove that information, you can. It would then mean you probably just have to log back in again, which might take out some of the usefulness, but I suppose for security, they give you that option. They're saying it's encrypted and protected, so I would assume it's safe, and no less safe than logging into any other smartphone application, I think. And any other company that's sort of doing it, I guess you're just, this is a smaller company, so I think that there's probably some people find a risk there, but I wouldn't be too concerned. It sounds like you've got a good handle on what you can do, which is remove it if you want. And again, having security auditors, that's a third party situation. So somebody from outside the company comes and checks and makes sure that it looks okay. So that sounds good to me. What is Rabbit's approach to working with apps? This is probably also a big contention point for a lot of people, because I think there's been some confusion about what exactly that people are going to be able to do, particularly on day one. And to be fair, day one, right? Let's not forget. So, what is Rabbit's approach to working with apps? By connecting to your services through the Rabbit Hole, you're granting access to allow our Rabbits to operate them on your behalf. With this access, Rabbits can see whatever you see on your apps. They may see private information, but we don't store that information anywhere. A virtual environment is created on the cloud every time you ask the R1 to do something for you, and that session is ephemeral, which is, quick and temporary, I should say. It says it there, aka short and temporary, discarded after your task is completed. So the Rabbit also respects consumer apps. Sometimes apps may refuse to provide service by blocking you or giving you captures. To show our respect to those apps, they do not solve them, but rather report them accurately to the users. That's probably very important for a lot of other companies outside of Rabbit. One note on performance: how well our Rabbits perform on any given app is a direct result of the performance of the apps they're operating. Some apps are slow while others are faster. Some are reliable while others are less so. So this is, let's say YouTube Music, which is what I use for my music platform. Basically what they're saying here is that when you do engage the Rabbit to use that app, the performance of the app is directly related to how YouTube Music performs rather than what the Rabbit is doing. They don't have control over making the app function faster. What they can do is only focus on how quickly the Rabbit can compute the task you're asking it to do. So the app still functions the way that it should. The reason why I pointed out specifically that they respect consumer apps, what that means is when you are given something like a CAPTCHA to take care of, the Rabbit's not solving that for you, and that's probably a very important step and probably what's going to promote longevity for Rabbit, because if they were skirting around those security measures, they might likely get blocked, which it doesn't look like they're doing. So what they're doing is presenting it to you, I assume, on the screen, and gives you a way to solve that. I'm assuming, by the way, because I don't know what that looks like yet, and I haven't seen any in any of the demos that have been shown on the Discord. So it says we don't solve them, but report them to our users. So presumably I'm going to get a chance to solve the CAPTCHA, and then the Rabbit will just continue what's happening. So that makes a lot of sense. And nothing really amazingly new there. How is Rabbit working with LLMs, or large language models? We collaborate with LLM vendors like Perplexity, Anthropic, and OpenAI to use their services for understanding user intentions. When a user interacts with the Rabbit OS, we route their requests to the most suitable model capable of fulfilling their needs, whether it's our in-house model or one provided by our partners. User data is stored on our servers, only processed user-initiated conversations and utterances which do not contain any personally identifiable, private, or sensitive information are sent to our partners. So that is a tricky thing to dissect, but let's get back to that in a second. Note that LLMs, the underlying frameworks for understanding intentions, are still at their early stages. They can hallucinate and make mistakes, and they're not fast enough yet. We uphold a high bar of bringing the best experience to our users. To this end, we're actively working with our partners to push user experience and collectively define the capabilities and boundaries of LLMs. So, essentially, what they're saying here, I mean, this is again my interpretation, but I feel like I have got a grip on it, but they're saying that they have engaged a few of these LLMs, particularly Perplexity, which I'm going to do another video on Perplexity soon, but so keep your eye out for that. But I think Perplexity, Anthropic, and OpenAI, which is ChatGPT, to use their services for understanding intentions. So what it means is when you give the Rabbit a question, when you engage the Rabbit using the push to talk, it's going to figure out what is the best large language model to understand what it is that you're actually asking, to then actually understand what you're asking. So it figures out what's the best one to fulfill what it needs to do. It says user data is stored on our servers, but only processed user-initiated conversations and utterances which do not contain any personally identifiable, private, or sensitive information are sent to our partners. And so I think one of the key things with an LLM is that it can actually recognize, when you're giving your phone number or you're saying your address. What they're trying to explain is that information, it wouldn't be sent out to the third-party partners, which is Perplexity, Anthropic, OpenAI, and they're saying vendors like, which means they might be engaging with other ones that might be in the background, and I'm not exactly sure yet. And particularly, more importantly, Perplexity is also engaging with some of those. So there's a sort of a mixed pool going on of that kind of thing. Some of that information is going to be sent back, but that is the same way as using ChatGPT now, or Google now, or which is Gemini, or even just Google, to be fair. Any of these services, sometimes when you engage with them and give them some information, some of that information gets sent away. So that's the cost of using free services sometimes. The last part here is, what else is Rabbit doing to help the development of this new industry? So Rabbit is committed to giving back to the community by contributing to research and engineering. At the moment, some of these areas include contributing to web automation and app automation frameworks, participating in the discourse of agent interaction with consumer apps in the real world, by designing and releasing benchmarks, tool chains, and communicating with app developers. Contributing to on-device compute by releasing in the future optimized local models for perception and conversational AI. In the same way that R1 is just our first step in rethinking the AI software and hardware experience, we're also at the early stages of action-centric AI, which is, essentially the LAM. We're looking forward to doing even more to support the development of this industry in the future. We really appreciate the support that we've received over the past few months, even though we're a very small startup with significantly fewer resources than other giant tech companies out there. We're still dedicated to delivering a solid experience with R1 on day one. This is just the beginning. So, I think for me, that's a great little update that I think covers probably some of the questions people have been asking. I think that they're taking a lot of risk by not having had more reviewers get their hands on the device. But with that being said, it is such a small company in the grand scheme of things. Like they've said, it is such a small number of devices in the grand scheme of things. Like 100,000 devices, let's say. Like I know they've passed that milestone. I don't know how much deeper they are into that, but 100,000 devices is very, very minimal, right? There are so few of us that are going to be using this device, by the time, let's say, next year rolls around. Who knows what's happening if they're going for the R2 or they're going to be, keep going from there, whatever it is. There's so few people using this device that really can they afford to just send out a bunch of devices to reviewers? I don't know. I assume the answer is no, because they haven't. But, I don't know the full details is the answer. What I do know is I've seen some comments around about MKBHD has had a bit of a hands-on test with the Rabbit, and there's a video that I'm hoping is coming out soon. I haven't missed it, I hope, where he's going to talk about it a little bit and has some thoughts he said, which is great. And I think that will give some legitimacy where people are a little bit concerned at the moment. And I think it's a little unfair, some of the discourse that I see going around at the moment where people, claiming scam and sham and whatever. But that's clearly incorrect, because if you've paid attention to what's happening around you on the information sources that they have, you can see it working. I can see it happening. I've seen updates, and in another video I showed you a bunch of uses of the camera, which was really interesting to see for me anyway. So I think it's a little bit unfair to hold a small company to the same standards as, say, Apple, right? They're doing what they can with the resources they've got. I think that we're 1 month out now from probably the R1 batch to be arriving at people's doorsteps, which I think is going to be really great, and again, really drum up some excitement. So I hope that they're prepared, because once it's in people's hands and people see it happening, with specifically these kind of features that we've got there, it's only going to ramp up from there, which I think is really great, and I'm really excited for the future when it comes to this. In my situation, I'm likely not to have the Rabbit, the R1, for maybe till middle to end of the year, I would say, being in Australia. So I will just do my best to keep up to date with the information as I can, and see some of the use cases and share them with you here. Hopefully this helped you a little bit, just going through this blog. It is on their website. If you go to updates, there is this blog post here. There's a couple other things here, not much, but hopefully they're going to start keeping this more common and more current. Your questions about R1 and LAM answered, which is right here, so you can read through it yourself, but we've pretty much covered everything here. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe. I'm going to be doing a couple other videos, and let me know below if there's anything specific you'd like me to look at and talk about. I'm more than happy to try and make a video, where I can for it. I think for the moment, there's a Perplexity video on the horizon, which has definitely caused some confusion for some people. And I don't know what's next, but I've got plenty of things to look at. So let's just see how deep this rabbit hole goes.